Welcome to Unlearning with Laura, the podcast where you get to rewire your mind, reclaim your power, and break generational cycles. I'm Laura Stiles, clinical hypnotherapist and mindset coach, and founder of The Mindful Generation, the place where parents come to transform their lives and live with more purpose and freedom. Let's dive in. Welcome. This week we are speaking to Amy Grilli, mum of boys aged 6 and 3 and co-founder of the 5 Hour Club, a platform which shapes 5-hour workdays for parents to be able to maintain their careers between school hours. Amy and Emma, her co-founder, also share hints and tips for returning to work after children through their podcast and online community. If you are looking for flexible work that is not an entry-level role, then this episode is for you. We talk about the broken system, flexible working, and how to parent and have a career sustainably. So here we go. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Unlearning with Laura. Today I have the lovely Amy Grilli with me from 5 Hour Club. Hello Amy.
Hello Laura, thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. It's so nice to have you on. And if anyone hasn't heard of Amy or doesn't know about the work that Amy does with her co-founder Emma, they have set up a wonderful platform called 5 Hour Club, and it's basically a job board for jobs that work within school hours, so 5-hour workday. And tell us all about it, Amy, because I just think that this is the future. I think that for working mums, well, parents, not just mums, but yeah, navigating work around school runs is so hard. And when you're trying, and I've been there, I worked full time in a job trying to like dip out for the school run and then come back and then catch up on work whilst I was trying to make sure the kids were okay and then logging on again in the evening. So this is a fabulous idea. Tell us how 5 Hour Club was born and what drove you to do it.
So it was based on an identity crisis, basically. So I took about 5 years out from my career. It was a conscious decision at the time. I was a teacher with the idea of being an educational psychologist after having children. And I thought, maybe I'll do my PhD during my maternity leave, which is completely naive. But anyway, so I'd wanted to be there to raise my children. And I took this time out. And when I was looking to go back to work, I thought, well, I'll just go and find a part-time role. When I was searching for these things, it was really difficult. There were just no high quality or high pay, at the level that I was at previously to, go into the next part of my career after having the boys. And I just felt really stuck. I just felt completely trapped, not knowing where to go, what to do. And then, my eldest started school and somebody, quite a few people asked me, what do you do? It's like, well, at this point, I'm a stay-at-home mum, and you know what it's like in this society, that is not valued in any way, shape, or form. So I didn't want to say that. I didn't feel like that is who I was. That wasn't all of my identity. I'm a very ambitious person. I was before kids, and I didn't feel like that ticked that box. So I was like, well, what do I do? And I basically had an identity crisis at the school gates. I was like, I don't know who I am, what I'm going to do, where I'm going. How do I describe myself? And so it was sort of based off that I was then looking at this time. I now had away from both my boys, and my youngest had just started nursery. And so I had about 2 days where I had these 5-hour days in between. And I was like, well, I can be really productive during that time. I don't just want to be doing the housework or all that invisible load stuff that also needs to happen. But, if I was able to work between the school hours, I would be so productive and get stuff done. But there just wasn't anything out there. So I sort of floated this idea with my now co-founder, but at the time was my best friend from NCT. We had met, well, it would have been 5 years ago. And we met at NCT when we were both very heavily pregnant. We've had 2 boys since together, and we spent a lot of time, on our play dates with our youngest, ranting about the system. And she had successfully transitioned from being a teacher into a career in tech. And I was looking at her in awe and thinking, well, this can be done. There are flexible, great opportunities out there, but it's not known, or they're really hard to find. And so I sort of said this idea around the 5 Hour Club. She was like, yeah, sounds great. And on her birthday, bless her, Emma, she's so good. She basically coached me to the point where we decided we were going to do a podcast, because we were like, well, if there's anybody else that feels the same way that I do, that I feel, stuck, or even just to highlight this invisible load that we all go through. So we started with the idea of just doing a podcast to sort of share these stories about how people navigate life between school runs. And then about a month later, I just had the idea to go onto LinkedIn. Now, I don't use LinkedIn. I didn't use LinkedIn before. I was a teacher, I didn't really need to use it. But I felt like I didn't belong there. So I basically wrote my story and shared that I'm a parent and I don't belong on LinkedIn.
So
And
I remember that. Sorry, I'm interrupting because I remember that's how I heard about you in the first place. Because I saw that post, the viral post, and I was like, "This is great. Whoever this woman is, this is fab that people are talking about this for someone." Because it was clear that you know, hadn't really been on LinkedIn and didn't really have a reason to be there as a teacher. And I was like, "That's so cool that this person has gone on to LinkedIn and this has gone viral, and this is how so many parents are feeling." So that's kind of how I came across you, and I was so amazed at how things seemed to like appear to just blow up after that. That was so cool.
I mean, that's so cool to hear because there's a few people that we still speak to now from that post. And I'm like, it's just madness the way it just blew up, like you say. Kind of, yeah, it was reaching 1 million a day for 14 days. So it hit 14 million impressions at the end. But I think it just showed how many other people felt this way, how many other people resonated, how, yeah, what a big problem globally it is. And I have no idea. Like, I don't use LinkedIn, so I don't know what shouldn't go on there. I only went on there because I thought, well, maybe in the future, if we, I want to speak to employers about roles, maybe, I need to be on there. But yeah, it was just madness. And so off the back of that post, we asked the community, which was basically born overnight, which we're very grateful for, what did they want? And the thing that they wanted were jobs. They wanted what we were calling 5-hour workdays. So, and we were lucky at the back of that we had some really great employers come to us and say, yeah, we work in this way, or we work with parents in this way, or we can offer this way of working. So we shaped the 5-hour workday criteria, sort of found jobs, and within 2 months started our job board, which was really cool, really mad. And poor Emma, bless her, she was still working full time at the time, and just jumped in both feet, and she's in data. So she was analysing all of the comments and everything that was coming in and seeing where the patterns were. So it was just madness. But that was essentially where it was born, like this time last year, which is,
Yeah.
God,
it's a really short amount of time, isn't it? To think that has just happened in that time, and just also pinpointing that like how big the problem is. Like, that's fascinating that you've put that out there. Thankfully, Emma works in data and like was able to sift through it all and figure out the patterns. And that's awesome that you've been able to help each other. Because I feel like if I'd have done what you did alone, it would feel really scary to, first of all, almost feel like you've got overnight fame, because that's a bit of a kind of shock to the nervous system, isn't it? The fact that you co-founded it with Emma and you're already friends is wonderful, because I can imagine you were like really supportive of each other and helping each other to kind of like get this thing off the ground. But yeah, also,
for us, for us, it was like we were not planning to become co-founders. We had to very quickly sit down, and actually we'd had a spa day booked in just as friends soon after that, because we had our boys' birthdays parties all booked in. So we were like, oh, we're gonna have a spa day. And we walked on this spa day, basically strategizing, thinking, how is this going to work? Like, we have no idea how we run play dates together. We don't really run businesses together. And thank God we have really different skill sets, and we also have really different hormonal cycles, which really helps because it just, I feel so grateful that she was there during this time, because I could not. It was really intimidating. I mean, I still know that I haven't responded to everybody who came through, and just knowing what to do with it. I mean, I look back now and I was like, I felt like it was my duty to do something about this. I didn't even think twice. It was I was just like, well, we've got to do something, but that's a huge problem. But luckily Emma was there, and she took a sabbatical for 9 months to sort of go in with both feet and help out and figure out what we're going to do with this and how we're going to move it forward. So I'm very grateful for her, and the fact that we have made it work as friends, and we're still friends, and we are making it right now as co-founders, which is really bizarre, but the best thing ever.
no.
I don't know how founders do it, in all honesty. Like, it's so up and down. It would be really tough.
Yeah, it's a stressful business, isn't it? Like, setting up a business, like you said, you kind of are not used to doing that kind of thing. You started as NCT friends, and suddenly you're like almost thrown into setting up a business. And that's what I found as well, as someone who's, I did a coaching course and I'm essentially a therapist as well. But like, you don't go into your work thinking, as a therapist, thinking, oh, I've got to do like strategy and this and marketing and blah, blah, blah. And that side of it is really hard, and you've got to learn on the job. And so, I'm in awe of like how you've done it, because it seems like the job boards. I mean, I've taken a look at the job board, and it's all very professional, and you've got some fab like companies that you're working with, and it's just such a brilliant idea. And also the fact that you've chosen 5 hours, because people could say, well, what about 6 hours? And it's like, well, I've got to have some time to actually like go to the loo and eat lunch and
easy between school runs and eat something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's such a genius idea. Do you find that a lot of companies or like HR folks, like, do they discover you and do you get like inundated with messages, or do you find it's quite sort of conflicted because there's someone within a company that wants to get in on board, but there's maybe a decision maker that won't allow it? Does it get a bit complicated with that sort of thing?
Yeah, so for the larger companies, it's definitely those layers. So we often will get a great DEI or HR lead who is very much for it, very much understands the reasons why and how it could possibly impact the company. But then you go to the hiring managers who have a budget and say, well, I could hire a full-time person for that, or they could get somebody maybe less qualified and cheaper. That's the battle that we have with the larger companies, is sort of recognizing that what they're going to get is, access to this untapped talent pool, which is massive and really skilled and experienced. What we have found though is that you got a sort of group of companies that do really work well for this. So, impact-led organizations, female-founded or parent-led organizations obviously love this idea. And then you're sort of those small, medium enterprises where they can be a bit more agile and they do look at things on more of an individual basis. I think that's the barrier that we often have, is that, well, if I do it for you or this one person, I can't do it for the other person. And we essentially say, you're not giving them any more. And at this point, we're saying it's a pro rata salary. So we're not asking them to, match a salary as much as we think these parents deserve to have this increased salary and increase part of that. We're not saying that at this point because we know it's, individual basis compared to, like the 4-day week, which is in the entire company goes that way. But yeah, it is tricky. And because we have got this criteria, it does create barriers. But the reason we put them in is to protect parents. Like, we know it's very easy to see a company who are doing it as a tick box exercise, or who are just doing it because they want to take advantage of a parent or a mum. So we want to protect parents as much as possible from those types of companies. But yeah, it makes it harder to find the roles. It's not easy. I mean, the fact that is such a lack of part-time roles anyway, and this essentially is just a reshaping of a part-time role, but we're trying to redesign it in a way where it gets more respect and, more opportunity for progression and better pay and all of those things. But it's not too different, but companies can't see the benefit of that, sadly. So yeah, we've got a lot of work to do. Like I said, it is really hard, and that's why I'm so grateful for Emma being by my side with it. But yeah, we have had some really great work, and we're currently working with an NHS trust who are doing a pilot with us, and a construction company too, who want to retain more women because they see the benefit of it. And we're going to measure the impact over 6 months. So we're going to look at things like belonging and well-being and productivity, and then the retention, at the end as well. So they are all for it. They're seeing that there's positives, and now we're just going to collect some data to hopefully prove out that this way of working does work on both sides, for both businesses and for the parent as well.
That's awesome. And do you know what? I would argue that when I was working full time, that first couple of years of going back to full time work, that I probably was only productive enough to be a 5-hour workday. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like mums are so amazing at learning how to multitask and problem solve and all of the other incredible things that you learn on the job when you become a new mum. So it feels like it's a bit of a no-brainer for so many companies. Like, even if they're thinking, oh, but 5 hours isn't enough, you're not going to get much out of that day. But if you cut out the commute and you're working from home, and I know they have all these bloody annoying back to office mandates that do my head in. It's like, well, just save the millions of pounds on the office, let the parents work from home, cut out the commute. That 5-hour workday will probably be the same amount of output that you're receiving from someone doing an 8-hour workday. And we're able to put on a wash in between, we can...
More sustainable. So they're probably saying your company longer term, you get much more out of them. That's what we say. And actually the research does say that, but for a knowledge worker, their max productivity is around 4 to 5 hours anyway. Yeah. So after that point, it pretty much drops off. So if you think about it that way, if you think you put everything into it for those 4 to 5 hours, those 3 hours, the only trouble is that we find is like, well, parents, if they are doing a full-time day and they're doing those 5 hours, they think, well, I might as well get the salary. But the impact that those extra hours has on, then they have to pay for extra childcare, then they have to do that extra long commute, then they have to find somebody to, help at the end of the day or whatever it is. And the stress levels and the, you still have to do certain things at home. You still have to go here. That, the inflexibility of a full-time role is so huge. And the impact that has on a parent means that they drop out of the workforce. So that has that. So in the short term, it seems like that's a good idea. In the longer term, you're just going to lose these people left, right, and centre. So yeah. And I wish that's what businesses would understand. And there's a few businesses in the US actually who the whole business works a 5-hour workday, and their KPIs went up. They all of their output was higher, everything went up, and they didn't do it for parental reasons. One of them we speak to, he does do it now for parental reasons, but they did it because I wanted to go surfing in the afternoon. But their entire company still runs in that way, so it shows that it can be done. I think it's just, like you say, some of these dinosaurs who think, well, if your bum's not in your seat for 8 hours and you're not being productive, and I said, well, not in this day and age when we've got, technology and AI and we can work from home. So
yes, oh my God, yeah, people like Alan Sugar, they can just fuck off. It's so frustrating. Yeah, absolute dinosaurs.
children ever in their lives.
Yeah, it's such an old-fashioned way of thinking, isn't it? And it's such another like patriarchy kind of problem, isn't it? So you've been doing quite a lot of like campaigning and I guess getting involved with, I was going to say activism, but being a voice for things like parental leave recently. Tell us a bit more about what you've been up to with that.
Sure, yeah. So we've been grateful to be asked to Parliament a few times now to speak about this and share sort of the parental voice, I guess. But our big perspective on this, that if we were to share parental leave from the beginning, the impact that will have not only on sharing the parental responsibility and all of those things at home, but also that would impact sharing the domestic load from the beginning. That would then mean that women can go back to work sooner because that responsibility is shared. It obviously normalizes it for dads to take more of that sort of responsibility from their parents, take that time out of their career, and then that will have huge impacts on the motherhood penalty and then the gender pay gap, because if you get women into work again sooner, then they can start to progress in their career quicker. So we're huge advocates for the changes to parental leave, and particularly, extending it for dads, making it more fair, making it more equal for everybody, not just dads, carers and anybody, and self-employed parents as well. So we just can see the huge impacts it can have long term. And I think at the moment it's such a short term thing, and it very much the way that it's set up. Yes, we get it as women, but it's so poorly paid. It means people have to basically become the default parent from the beginning, and that then impacts their career longer term. And that's what I've noticed. So personally, I was able to take these 5 years out, and I was very grateful for that. But I look back now and I think, wow, the impact that's had on our family dynamic. So it very much set a precedent that I was the default parent. My husband was the breadwinner. He went back to work. His careers continued to progress. And I naively didn't think about my career like that. I thought, well, when I'm ready to go back to work, I'll be able to go back to work. Didn't think about the impact it would have on my pension, my long-term career progression, any of those things. I just wanted to be there for my family. But if we were, not forced into a situation, but if we were given the opportunity to then share that responsibility from the beginning, I think that would just have a huge impact around our dynamics and the way my husband looks at, the housework or looking after the children. And it's not anything he's done wrong, it's just the system. And we've gone into these very traditional roles, which I kick myself for now, really. Although I've loved having that time with my children, it's had a huge long-term impact on me and my career. So yeah, I think from a personal point, I can see the benefit, and I look at others who have maybe shared it more equally from the beginning. I can see the difference in their dynamic and how they parent, how they share the load at home, how they work in their careers and how they manage with that. And that is something that I'm aiming for now, but I'm doing this 5 years too late. I'm doing this, so our system and everything is already very much set in. And I think that's just going to have a huge impact going forward. And it's not the example that I actually want to show my boys, that I want them to grow up knowing that I work. And that is one of the big reasons why, I really desperately wanted to go back to work. It was a big part to show them that, women can work too. Mums can be, can do what they want and have a career as well. So yeah, it's just sort of stopping that, I guess, the patriarchal system and those traditional roles from the beginning. And I think parental leave has a big part to play in that, which is why, we're very much, supporting Dad Shift and all of the work they're doing and extending the parental leave. So yeah, we're very grateful to be able to be part of those conversations, because I think those are so powerful. And also things like we're talking the employment rights bills too, about how we can support SMEs, for example. Yes, we've got these flexible working bills that come in, but what impact does that have on businesses, small businesses particularly, which are 99% of our economy in the UK. So what impact does that have, and how can we support them so that they can then offer those flexible working opportunities, so that they can be more flexible, so they can offer enhanced maternity and paternity leave? Because without the businesses being able to offer these things, us parents are not going to be able to access them or be able to work with the companies that really do support them and, you know, can work in that way. So as somebody called me like an accidental activist, and that's how very much how I feel. I feel, you know, I sort of, what like you say, was thrown into this for whatever reason. And I'm very grateful that I have been, but now I feel like it's actually, you know, I feel this duty to use my voice to share how, you know, it is for parents, and I guess that we understand it from the business side of things as well now. But yeah, you know.
Yeah. Thank you for all that you do, because honestly, the fact that you're getting involved with all of this stuff is just there'll be so many parents out there who are grateful for people like you who are able to get involved and carve out time to do this kind of thing. So there's a couple of things, so many things you said there where I'm like, oh, I want to pick on that, and my brain's just probably forgotten half of it. But did you say that England is 98% of SMEs? Is that right? Wow, I didn't realise it was that high.
High, and that's what I think we forget, is like that is such a huge proportion of our workforce. Yet if we don't support them in doing all these things, then they won't be able to afford to have these great maternity policies. So they can't compete then with these larger organizations who
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, that makes me feel super grateful, because the companies that I worked for when I had no, it was one company. Yeah, I'd been there for 7 years, so I'm just trying to think back now. I was working for a company, and they were doing really well, and they had a really good enhanced maternity leave, and I was able to take 12 months off with both my boys, and I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity, because to think like, oh my God, if it really is 98% of SMEs who wouldn't have ever been able to offer anything enhanced, I'm sure they struggle to really, because the maternity pay is so low, isn't it? It's so awful.
Minimum rate, and that's what the joke of it is. It's like, you know, what they're able to offer is so poor that then people think, well, if I can work for one company who can offer me more, then I'll go there. But they don't necessarily then able to, you know, they won't be the right ones to be family friendly after that. So
Yeah.
that's why, yeah, we're very much behind supporting SMEs as much as we possibly can, and those sort of charity organisations who don't get the funding or the big bucks to give parents what they need, even though they be the best employers. That's what we find. You know, SMEs are the best employers because they can be so agile and supportive.
Yeah, I've also worked for an SME, and they are it does feel like you're in a little family. Like, the working environment is usually very lovely, and you do feel supported. Like you say, it's just the kind of lack of funding for that side of things. My husband took off 2 weeks for the standard maternity that you get in the UK. And I remember at the time with our first, it felt very hard, because he felt like, I need to be here to almost protect and look after you, because I'd had a really tricky birth, and he could see how broken I was. And I think he really wanted to just be there at home to do the things that I was struggling to do, like making us lunch, and not him, not baby, but, you know, feeding me and making sure I had water, because I was just breastfeeding constantly, because he was a really tiny baby. But I was like so broken, and he, I think, really struggled with going back to work. I don't think I had postnatal depression, but I would argue that he almost kind of did, because I think he was like, this is shit. I don't want to be like commuting to my job in London when I need to be here with you. And so, you know, I've got a friend that lives in Sweden, and she was explaining how I think her husband took off like 6 months and she had 18 months, and it was all shared and all covered. And yeah, it very much is a broken system here, and I really hope it changes.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because when that sort of so powerful, I went to the dad strike, which was run by the dad shift, and it was the first ever sort of strike, and it was about paternity leave. And it was just so powerful to see so many dads wearing their babies with their little toddlers, not many mums there. And it was just to see, you know, they were doing it because they were doing it for them. Yes, they were doing it for their family, but they were doing it because that's what they wanted to do. And it was a really powerful, moving scene to see, really, that actually, you know, they just wanted to be dads. They just wanted to be about. And it's interesting. So I asked my husband, who, like I say, we've got very traditional roles in a way, sadly, but I said to him, you know, if you were working at a company who offered enhanced or shared paternity leave when we had ours, would you take it? And so he said no. And the reason he said no is because he had seen his other friends who had taken shared paternity leave for 6 months, and the impact that had on their career, because it had blocked them from going up that next level of progression that year, meant that, you know, because it's not normalized, because for men, taking a career break isn't normalized, or, for whatever reason. So he felt like, well, no, so it would impact my career. And I'm like, hello. You think it does to us? And he is very much, on our side and learning, this new way of working and is learning with me, so understanding that things can be done differently and should become differently. But for him, his gut instinct was like, well, no, because it would impact the progression. I was like, yes, this is the point. And that's because it's not normalized, because it's not, it's not okay for dads to take this time. Even when they're offered it, it's sort of seen as a negative thing. That's the thing that needs to be changed. So that is why, yeah, I'm very much supportive of that change for the right reasons. Like you say, in other countries, like in Iceland, they have 6 months for the woman, 6 months for the man, and 6 weeks where they share it. And if they don't take it, it's non-transferable and it's non-negotiable, so it's done. So they lose that time completely. And what they found is that I think it's a 98% uptake from the men of that paternity leave. And why that's so good is that over here, I can't think of what our uptake is, but it's so poor shared paternity leave. But it's because it's so badly done. And they're like, oh, it's because nobody really wants shared paternity leave. No, it's nothing to do with the fact that people don't want it. It's just because our system doesn't normalize the fact that it's a really good thing. So, but what was interesting is that men over there will take it more flexibly. So women might take a chunk of time off, so the 6 months, but the men will use it. They'll add it onto a little bit of holiday and they'll take it across the year as opposed to taking it in one big block. But Emma will tell you the stats around your career essentially gets impacted after a 6 month break. So as soon as you have more than 6 months, they say that actually that's where the impact is on your career, which is a shame. 6 months is not enough time to have off with your baby.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's not enough time. And thank God we don't live in the States where it's even worse. But it's so hard. And I think we just need to change the narrative. I think it's up to the government to come up with a campaign or some propaganda to actually allow men to believe and change that unconscious programming almost. It really is down to that, isn't it? It's our beliefs. And it's like men can easily change those beliefs if we just actually kind of drum it in and, start putting things out on the telly and in the media about it. But you touched earlier on like how you took out the 5 years and you're kicking yourself for it now. And the coach in me actually wants to say to you, let's reframe that, because those first 5 years having you around, it's like those imprint years are so important to your boys and their development. So actually, I would argue that don't have any regrets, because I think that it's really, really incredible for their development and their brain and their attachment, secured attachment to have you around. So, and I think it's also all about divine timing. I think that imagine if you had, I don't know, changed the timing or done something differently. I think that everything happens all in good time. And I think that, a year ago when 5 Hour Club was launched and all the things that have happened since may not have happened as successfully as they have happened. You know what I mean? Like, I think, yeah, you can probably reframe that and make yourself feel a bit better.
And I did take the time out, and I'm very, very grateful that I was in a position where I could take that time out with them, because I was an earlier teacher. So I'm very much, supportive of the fact that these few early years are so important to them and their development. I think the bit that I am not kicking myself for, but it's the naivety of what could I have done to be more intentional about myself during that time. So, should I have, if I had had the opportunity to just keep my toe back in, even just for a little bit, because I do think I lost part of myself during that time.
Yeah.
And they didn't get the full me. Like, I wasn't very happy, a lot of that time. I did have, some postnatal anxiety my second, but after that point, I just didn't feel like myself. And so they weren't getting the full present me because I was just so lost.
Yeah.
It's more sort of, what could I have done to be more intentional around looking after myself? I was there for the boys and I feel grateful. And that's why I like to work in the way that I do now, because I like to have that time after school with them. And that's very precious time, even if, they're watching TV half the time and I'm, faffing about cooking dinner and doing whatever else. But knowing that actually we've got that time, and if they do have a problem after school, having a hard time, then I'm there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it is more like, if I could have been more intentional about myself,
Yes.
career, that would have set me up more for success as an individual, as opposed to just being their mum and it being about them.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It is so hard. And you do lose yourself when you become, matrescence is that period of time where you really do change as a person. You do lose yourself, and it's totally normal to change your identity. And I think the actual transition of like figuring out who you're supposed to be now, that's really hard. And I think we all go through it, and I certainly did go through it and felt very confused and was a bit like, well, I don't want to do the work that I have been doing for the last 14 years or whatever. And it's hard to figure out like, what's my sense of purpose? First of all, figuring out that bit, and then it's like, okay, do I now figure out a job that's based around my sense of purpose? And for the women that are able to do that, it is incredible. But for some, it's just so hard to kind of find the means or to have the opportunity to be able to do that. And I think that's the hard bit, isn't it? And I think it was the BBC Panorama documentary. Was that earlier this year? Was that last year? I can't remember now. Yeah, wasn't it? Yeah. There was the lady on there who I believe you might have had on your podcast, and she was working in HR, wasn't she? And I think what happened with her, there was a really interesting story behind that, because she was obviously fairly senior, but then ended up just not having a job. Like, it was just a really sad story, and it's so common.
So Harleen, so she is a woman. When she was, there were only two or three women that were in that panorama sharing the positive things of working from home, and she got a slither of airtime sharing how her oldest son is autistic, and she got a younger toddler as well, and she just basically, since having her children, she got made redundant, I think twice, and then just has struggled to find work after that. And she needs part-time work because she needs to be there for her autistic son. But that didn't get aired. It was, what was shared was just the fact that she just wanted to use her brain, and that was it. But there's so much more behind all of that, the reasons why she needs to be there for her son and all those things. So yeah, we had her on the podcast to share her story fully, because it's those reasons that we need to keep remote working intentional and an option, not because people want to go off and play on the golf course.
Yeah, that was so annoying when they covered that bit. I was like, oh, shut up.
It was worse. I was so angry and ragey about that whole thing. But in some ways, it highlights the problem. It highlighted, the problem that we're having is that it's just not recognised and seen in the right way, and the wrong people calling the shots. So yeah, in some ways, it just highlighted the problem even more, I guess. But yeah, this poor Harleen, she's absolutely wonderful, and she's still struggling now. And those are the things that drive me and Emma every day, and remind us this is why we need to keep going, because we advertise, like, we want them to be high quality, high pay. If we can get senior leader roles, we want to shape these sort of roles. But some parents, they just need any job. And the sad thing is, at this moment in time, if you look for a part-time role, you're gonna get Amazon delivery driver or cleaner, or things that you're well overqualified and skilled for. And it's just a waste of all your experience. And that's what people are being faced with. They feel like they have no other choice, or they then get taken advantage of with some commission only role or things that, again, they're well overqualified for. So it's those things, and seeing people just really struggling, that obviously fuels our fire massively, which is a really hard thing. We get stories almost every day that in that same vein of, I've just been made redundant, or, I didn't get the job, I didn't even get a foot through the door because I said that I was a parent on my CV, all of those things. You think, I don't know, I just find it's a really hard thing, and I don't know what the answer is. Obviously, we're trying to create some sort of solution, but it's because there's such a lack of understanding why. That's what makes it so hard.
It seems like there's a lot of mums who have just started their own businesses, who have just either been pushed out the workplace, which I kind of was when I had my second child, and they just think, well, I need the flexible hours, so what can I do? Okay, I'll try and do, I don't know, a virtual assistant job, or my graphic design skills from years ago, I'll set up, an agency or whatever. And it's hard work, because I think if men go to do that, you can, I don't know, it feels like they would be more supported, whereas I've had comments like, oh, how's your little side hustle going? How's your little business? And it's like, it's not a little business, thank you very much. It's really frustrating.
It's not a hobby. It's not something I'm doing on the side to keep me busy. I have no other choice but to create my own job. That's what I do. And and I also get really frustrated for that reason, that it's just not respected as being something that's really important and something that's going to bring in any money, where that is often the only choice. And it's a really hard thing to run your own business. And I think that's where we want to offer an alternative there because it is really difficult. And yes, if you've got a skill, you've got something you can offer and you can recreate it into, charging somebody for that. That is brilliant. But all the behind the scenes bit of a business is really tricky. And a lot of people aren't set up for that. And it's, it takes a lot of time and energy as well. So it shouldn't be the only option. And it's bloody hard work. So it's not a flipping hobby.
Yeah, it's really hard work as well because you're trying to do things in your spare time. For example, if you've got a social media account and you're trying to get leads from social media, you're often trying to faff about with that in the evenings. Then you get sort of guilt feeling because you want to be present with your kids. And then you're thinking about the cleaning because like my house hasn't been hoovered for a week and I'm like, oh, it's gross. Yeah, there's just all the kind of obviously mental load stuff on top of it. And it just feels, although like I feel really grateful that I am now a business owner, it is quite hard and some weeks feel really, really hard. And then it's a real kind of like roller coaster journey, isn't it? But thank God that I think if you've got a good enough partner who's able to share the load and understand that you're not a robot who can literally do it all because you're going to burn out, if you've got a supportive partner, it can feel a little bit easier, I guess.
Yeah, and this is one of the problems we do see is that often with part-time work, particularly if you take on a part-time role, you are then seeing that you've got this extra time to do all this extra stuff, like still be the default parents, like still do all the domestic load and all of that stuff. And actually, you're doing a part-time role because there isn't other options to support you either side of that. There isn't no affordable childcare, there isn't those things. So you have to let things go. And that's what I've started doing because I very much was burning out because I would take them, I would do 3 5-hour work days, but doing bits in the evening because it's my own business. But I was still doing all the stuff I was doing when I wasn't working. And I was like, hang on a minute. I can't continue doing all this stuff. Yes, my husband works a 12-hour day, but he could also pick up some other stuff and he needs to because I can't do it all. Or I just accept that my house is an absolute pigsty all of the time. And it's just, I just have to let it go because I'm like, I cannot do it all. And I refuse to be cleaning at 11 o'clock at night because there's no other time. So it would just have to be like pigs for a good while. You can't do it all.
Yeah, you have to pick and choose the things and like prioritize what you need to prioritize. When I worked full time and I was setting up my business, we had a cleaner and it was amazing. It was super helpful. But when I finished with my full time job and started doing this work, I was like, we need to just be careful and scale back until I'm, earning a certain amount. And so, it's managing the load. And if your partner's got a job where they're out, or if you're a solo parent as well, but if your partner has got a job but they're out the house with their job, like mine is out of the house every day, he never works from home. So it does, we are the default parents where it just falls on us, and it can feel a lot, can't it?
You can, yeah. So I don't know, I think it's only by seeing good examples of it working and just having those conversations, communicating all of that stuff, that we can change these things, but it will take a long time. I'm just in my head, I'm like, right, as long as when the boys are parents or have families, that things have changed, a little bit, then because I think we're screwed. Or even if the next generation, like my sister's generation of parents, she's a bit younger than us. So if she can help her in some ways, that would be great. But it's and I think you just have to accept that you can't do it all and just be clear on the things that you're not going to do.
Yeah, and just as mums of boys as well, like trying to just educate them on, because I was very much raised as I was the only girl. I had 2 brothers, and it was pretty much me that was the one that would help out with the domestic tasks because that was just the gender role thing back then, and still is now, but very much back then. And now I'm like, boys, seriously, do you think that I'm the only one in the house that's going to do this? You need to come and help tidy, and I'm really trying to like drum it into them to help me out a bit more at home and they see Adam do it. They know that it's not just me because it's what we model to them. So do you have anything coming up soon with 5-Hour Club?
So apart from surviving some holidays, which actually I'm doing a lot differently this year, I have scheduled in a lot so that I can have some time to do things that I need to do as well. But we're doing a lot more for the community now. So we've got the job board up and running. Obviously, we want to get as many 5-hour work as we can. We've got the pilot up and running. So we're trying, measuring the data with the NHS and doing that. And so that will come out at the end of the year, the report from that. But we're also doing a lot more with the community. So, a big part for me, even more so than your jobs was, how can we help parents, going back to their career? So we're doing things like a coach masterclass series now, where we're getting experts in every month to share their view on different parts of your career, different parts of, how you do the juggle of life from work and all of those things. So that's really exciting. We're also doing that on the flip side with other coaches for businesses as well. So, talking to businesses and trying to help them, be more family friendly, be more progressive, think about things differently. So we're doing a lot of work sort of in the consulting kind of space as well, and offering workshops and training for businesses too. And then, yes, just doing a lot more on the advocacy piece. So trying to consult more on the Employment Rights Bill and share the impact it has on SMEs and on parents. So just a lot more. Basically, we're trying to get out of the echo chamber. Like, we know this is a massive problem. Every parent, woman, mother, dad you speak to know how much of a problem this is. So now we're trying to step out of that to the people who maybe don't know or don't have the experience of that or don't understand why. So just trying to come out of that echo chamber a little bit, speak to as many different people in different, with different hats as possible to get them to understand why we need to redesign the workplace in any sort of way. But, so lots of conversations and sort of moving conversations forward in a way that is supportive for parents is our big thing, but doing it, and helping parents as much as we possibly can in the community.
Well done. All of that just sounds so brilliant, because what I find hard in my work is, because I work with private clients, but with companies as well. And it often gets quite challenging and tricky if I'm working with a parent who has just returned to work, because it's usually the ones who have just returned after parental leave. They're struggling with like stress and the juggle and everything else. And they want to, work more flexibly. But they're in the middle of having conversations with HR, or maybe something hasn't quite worked out well, and maybe a flexible working request has been declined, and that's where it gets really tricky, because it's like it's not up to me to now go to HR. I'm there, they're paying me to offer a service to the parents, but there's only so much I can do for those parents without having to like go in and be talking to them as if I'm a consultant, which I'm not. But part of me does want to advise them on changing their policies and the way they do things, but that's obviously not within my remit. So it can be quite tricky to navigate those conversations and really support the parents. But there's only so much I can do as the parental coach that has been brought in by the company. And this is where it's hard. It's the systemic stuff, and it's like where the decision makers and those kinds of people need to think outside the box and listen to parents a bit more. So the work you're doing is just awesome, because I work with so many parents, but where I struggle is like, oh, I wish that bit of the system would change. I wish that, and that's kind of what you're doing, which is fab. So well done, you.
I think it's for all of us to have these conversations, like you say, like from your perspective as a coach, culturally, how can the line managers and, teams do it better for all members of their team, parents to speak up or feel confident to ask for those things, or to, ask for their rights and check all of their rights and things as well. And then we can, come in and try and help with some solutions or systemic stuff. But I think it has to come from all angles. Otherwise, they don't seem to hear it, sadly. And that's why we often speak to parents as opposed to just women or just mothers, because we've noticed often business leaders are sadly typically men. So, and unless they hear it from either a sort of a parent or a male perspective, they don't necessarily hear it if it's just a woman's problem. So that's why we sort of open it all up to all parents as opposed to just women. But we know essentially it's women who it impacts. So
such a good point. Oh, well done for everything you're doing, because it all just sounds really exciting and just important, really important work. And we need to see these new changes coming in. So
I couldn't do it without. I feel like there's just me and Emma around our kitchen table, but it does feel like we've got this incredible army of parents behind us, and we're very grateful for that support that we've had, from the beginning. So
it does feel like there's a little community, actually. You've got like Pregnant and Screwed, you've got Dad Shift, you've got you guys, there's just so many different like charities and movements, and I feel like all of us are kind of supporting each other, which is awesome. Okay, final question is going to be something a little bit different and a bit more personal, and that is just going back to newly pregnant Amy and thinking about, how you were feeling back then. And if you could speak to her now, what words of support would you give her?
So interesting. It's so hard with hindsight, I think, this question, because newly pregnant Amy was obviously so excited and focused on the baby and the newborn bit and trying to get all of that bit right. And, I wasn't thinking about myself or, my career or anything. I just couldn't wait to go off and be a mum. So I was really excited for, newly pregnant Amy and post-pregnant, I just sucked my firstborn, it was the best time that I had. But I think I also look back now, I just think I would just think longer term. This is, yes, you're excited now, and not to put it down on it, but just, be intentional about yourself. Look after yourself too, because you are just as important as that new baby. And yeah, be kind to yourself, be thoughtful of yourself, do the things that you need so that you can support yourself, without anybody else, without, I think it's that sort of longer term view of being intentional about your career. Because at that time I was not thinking about it. And I think that is the bit where I kick myself. And I know we said it earlier, but that's the point where I'm like, I was just naive. I thought that I did not know how broken the system was.
Yeah.
Now I know how broken the system is and the impact that can have on women and mothers and parents. I just think we have to be more thoughtful of it early on. And I wish that is the stuff that we get taught at NCT as well, to think about, think about that stuff, not just the survival of those first few years. Yes, all of that stuff is important, but there's so much around that. What isn't out there is how you can support yourself and do what you need for yourself and your career. Yeah, I guess that's what I wish I had known back then, which
Yeah, I'm not sure that anyone's ever answered it in that way before. So that's a really interesting lens to view it through, because you, like you said earlier, you do lose yourself. You kind of lose that identity. You don't know who you're going to be kind of shifting into as a new mum. And it's just a really kind of tricky time. And I think it just sums up women in general, like not putting ourselves first. And I know that comes with being a mum, but yeah, it just kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Just hold on to the favourite bits of yourself as much as you can and keep doing those things. I think that's all right. Yeah. I wish I just kept doing all the things I loved before kids and kept it going. I could hold on to it. So yeah. So it's funny actually, before I found out my sister was pregnant, I'd said to her, get yourself into a really, and with everything I know now, I was like, get yourself into a really strong position at work, get the title and the job that you want, get the salary that you want, before you go off on a maternity leave or anything, make sure you have all these things under your belt so that you are, not being questioned when you come back. And in that conversation, she told me she was pregnant, and I was like, damn it. Too late for you.
Oh, you're doomed.
Which is an awful thing to think, isn't it? Yeah. So I don't want people to think that.
Yeah, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Everyone kind of goes on their own journey. And I think I know I'm a bit woo-woo, but I do like to look at things like, oh, that's a message you can learn from, or that's kind of a learning, and that was meant to happen. And I don't know, I always feel like things happen for a reason. I always say to people, it's happened for a reason. So yeah.
People that too, so I can't. Things align for whatever reason, and I wouldn't be here, like you're saying, if I hadn't gone through that experience. But I think, I don't know, just for anybody going forward, just to think about themselves and make sure that they're being thoughtful of that.
Yeah, that is brilliant advice. And thank you so much, Amy. It's been so lovely to chat.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Do you know what? The time of recording, I must just let the listeners know, because at the time of recording, it's just about to be the summer holiday. Like, we're breaking up for summer this week. I think most people are doing it this week. My kids are going off next week. But when this comes out, it might be towards the end of the summer holiday. So if there's a mismatch in what we're talking about, that'll be why. But I do hope you have a wonderful summer with your boys. And, it sounds like you've got some really, really fun things planned. So I'll be keeping an eye on your socials and watching, what you're up to. On that note, can you share with the listeners where people can find you?
Yes, sure. So we are at 5 Hour Club anywhere on socials, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and we're www.5hourclub.com for the job board, and all of our masterclasses and resources and things are on there too. So 5 Hour Club anyway, with the word 5, not the number.
Yeah. With the word 5, spell out the word 5. Thank you, Amy. And if you are someone who's thinking, oh, I need to have a bit more flex in my day and I really want to work less hours, the job board is really great. So do check it out if you're in that position. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, enjoy your summer too.
Cheers. Yeah, and you. Good luck. Bye.